My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds or geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic multiverses, Mega Christmas, Grinch's franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
Can't see it, but I was miming a microscope there.
Yes, or kind of like almost like a periscope, or is that the thing that goes in a submarine?
That is the thing that goes in a submarine, a periscope.
Oh, what's that thing that like pirates use? It's like is that like a viewfinder?
A looking glass.
Oh, a looking glass. Oh, okay.
I think. Wait.
It's unimportant for what we're talking about today. Beef Pork Ribs, it is time to go back in time to talk about the year 2011. This was a big year for me personally. It was the first year that I was in university for like all 12 months. Well, I was off during the summer, but it was like, in terms of my university career, it was the first calendar year where I was officially a university student for the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It was also the last summer I spent working back home and living with my family. Ever since then, I've sort of, been living away from home. It was also the first time I ever went on an airplane in 2011.
Impressive.
Went to a Catholic conference over New Year's in Vancouver, and the only way to get there is to fly, really. You can drive or take the train, but it'll take forever. And on a personal note, honestly, 2011 was a very important year for me because it was the year when I decided to put Jesus at the center of my life, had a personal conversion to Jesus Christ, and that's informally often referred to as like my conversion to faith from like a really human adult perspective, and not just something that I was introduced to and kind of raised in by my family. So, yeah, 2011 was a very important year for me. What about you, Beef Pork Ribs?
Man, you're gonna make it seem really lame for me. No, 2011 actually was pretty important in a sense. I switched my program in university. I actually switched universities after first year. Started studying philosophy. Had my first relationship started in 2011, so that was a thing too. No, it was a pretty good year. It was went from boring science program to fun philosophy program, and
there's no such thing as a fun philosophy program.
All philosophy programs are fun, and first relationship, so big year, I guess. It was fun. I remember some of these movies specifically, actually. Well, actually, I remember one very specifically seeing it in theaters, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, so before we dive into the specific kind of categories of nerd and geek culture, here are some general pop culture events from 2011. You can tell me if you remember these things or not. Charlie Sheen had his famous meltdown in 2011 with the winning Tiger Blood stuff.
I remember that being a thing. I don't specifically remember it, but yeah.
For those of you who weren't really paying attention to pop culture at the time, Charlie Sheen was one of the biggest TV stars at the time, starring in 2.5 Men, which was one of the highest rated sitcoms. And for whatever reason, he kind of like went off on a series of rants and public appearances where he was talking about having tiger's blood inside of him and that he was just #winning. And his behavior led to him being fired from 2.5 Men and being replaced by Ashton Kutcher, who obviously played a different character.
And the show went down the drain, unfortunately. It's sad, but he was the backbone of that show, partially because he was kind of crazy. So, yeah.
This was the year that James Franco and Anne Hathaway hosted the Oscars, and it was infamously terrible. I don't know if it's true, but James Franco looked stoned the entire time. He was up there. He had like zero energy, and he just like, and then Anne Hathaway. Did you watch this Oscars?
I have never watched any Oscars.
Oh, okay. Well, imagine this: James Franco, seeming like he's high, with Anne Hathaway, who they tried co-hosting the Oscars, and she was kind of trying to like just put more energy into it for the lack of energy he was putting into it, and it was just awkward for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds awkward.
This is also the year that Prince William married Kate Middleton, so the royal wedding was a huge thing. That a lot
I
of people
do
paid attention
remember
to.
that.
I remember studying for exams, and I had CBC News on, and they were like covering the whole thing. It was
Okay, I was not that intensely into it. I feel like they came to visit Canada also that summer. Was it that summer or the next one? Because I do remember waiting at a bus station for an hour and a half because buses weren't coming because there was a huge traffic jam due to their visit around that. It was shortly after their marriage, I believe.
And then this was the year that Oprah, after 25 years of television, had her final episode. I never have ever watched an episode of Oprah, so I have no special attachment to the woman, but of course I'm aware of how significant.
It's a landmark.
Yeah, so, and we'll talk about other things that started and ended in 2011, but those are just some kind of like general pop culture highlights, and for anyone who wasn't really paying attention to pop culture at the time, these are probably all new pieces of information for you, and those of you who are around are probably like, oh yeah, I remember that. So we're going to start diving into...
For all our audience that is, 9 years of age and less, who wouldn't remember that?
So we're going to start diving into the categories of nerd and geek culture for the year. And I think the way we did it last week was a good mix-up of categories, kind of like starting with the obscure, moving into mainstream, and then back into the obscure with the anime, and then finishing on the movies. So we'll start...
I like how you're saying video games are obscure.
Well, whatever. Point is, here we are, video games of 2011. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a similar article from IGN ranking them, but there's a different website called The Register in the UK that somehow had access to this information. So here are the top 10 selling video games of 2011. We're going to broaden a little bit. We'll briefly mention the 10 through 6 and then focus on the 5 through 1. So,
all right.
The 10th most popular video game...
That's why you want to start there.
...is Batman Arkham City, the sequel to Batman Arkham Asylum. I never played this one because I found Arkham Asylum too hard. But
like as a video game or hard to get through? Okay.
It was too challenging. I was not enough of a gamer to do well. But I understand Arkham City is better than Arkham Asylum. That's what most people who have played the game have told me.
I haven't played it, but the Arkham City just generally still has like a high standing for, video games and specifically superhero video games. I think it's between that and the Lego games, which are always, fun. But Arkham City, still Mark Hamill being the Joker and, the game being
and Kevin
fun,
Conroy is
Kevin Conroy is Batman. So, it's you can't go wrong with that, even if the game was terrible. But no, the game was good.
Bat Cookie
for sure.
The 9th most popular game was Saints Row the Third. I don't even know what this is.
I think it's a third-person shooter.
Oh, bat-noogie.
Yeah.
Number 8, L.A. Noire. I'm relying on you here.
I remember it coming out, and I remember people making a big deal out of it. I just don't remember what it actually was.
All right, well, with that...
We'll give that one a noogie and hope that we have better... I feel like last week I had better knowledge of them, so maybe it was just an off year for video games.
Well, you were too busy studying fun philosophy. 7th most popular game, Assassin's Creed Revelations.
I mean, the Assassin's Creed games did fairly well. I don't know if that one is... I seem to recall, like, the first one people were really hyped about, and then as they kept coming out, people were, like, getting less and less excited about them. And then the movie came out, and nobody was excited about that.
Do you recall what Revelations was about specifically?
I feel like it was the one where something about the time-traveling machines was revealed.
Oh, there we go.
I know, but I seem to recall Revelation being the one where they went like further back in time as opposed to just going like Middle Ages and modern time, but I could be wrong.
All right, well, with that all in mind, I guess I'll give it a bat cookie. Why not? Throw it a bat cookie.
Yeah, it's Assassin's Creed. Parkour was still popular in 2011, so it was still like hip.
The 6th best-selling game was Just Dance 3.
I like it.
I'm guessing mostly on the Wii.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Those games sell well, and I mean, man, if it was on the Wii, it'd be the only like Nintendo-ish thing that's up here.
I mean, I guess it's good to have video games like this that encourage physical activity, as opposed to just smashing your fingers around a bunch.
Yeah, but there are better ones and ones that have had much more success, I feel. But it's also, people like pop music, and so it always does a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm not a good dancer, so I'm gonna give this a bat-noogie.
No, me too. I don't like dancing games.
All right, so the 5th best-selling game of 2011 was The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
I had to do that.
Sure. I'm guessing you're familiar with this game?
Yes, I am familiar with this game. It's still up there for RPGs, still, releasing more side quests. It's basically, an eternal open world RPG. You can do...
RPG means role-playing game?
Yes. It's open world. It's got about 1 million side quests that you could do. I think the main storyline is like a 20-hour game, which is, fairly decent, but like... There are thousands of hours of side quests in it, different builds, something that was...
So you're saying people are still playing this game?
Oh, people are still playing this game.
I don't know, maybe they've made another Elder Scrolls since then.
They've made alterations to Skyrim. I don't think there's been a new Elder Scrolls game altogether. No, there has been. But now I'm not sure anymore. But the game had... One of the things about it was it had so many customization. Also, as we're moving through these games, we're going to get more and more, I feel, games that weren't just released at once, but, kept getting eternally patched and reworked and getting, DLCs, exactly.
Downloadable content.
Exactly, because a lot of these games, this is the time where, people would make a good game and then be like, yeah, we can milk this out for a little bit longer, and games were being downloaded more instead of being bought on CDs. That was one of the things, actually, we talked about last week, StarCraft 2. Like StarCraft 2, you didn't actually need the CD. They still sold it with it, but it was basically a downloadable game. And that was kind of the beginning of this being the mainstream. And nowadays, like, nobody buys CDs for games.
Yeah, I know both my brothers have played Skyrim, so in honor of them, I'm giving this game a back.
Oh, yeah, it's even just like the memes, arrow to the knee, Fushroda, like all these things that have stayed in popular culture. It started there. So, yeah, Bat Cookie.
Number 4, Zumba Fitness. Again, it's good to see these exercise games.
I'm curious how that did better than Just Dance. It must have been some good marketing. Because, it's a fitness game, and so is Just Dance in some way. Maybe it was just people, maybe it was like the Wii Fit. When it came out, everybody's like, oh, yes, this is the only way that you can do exercise with video games. So, like, all the moms bought it. So that's probably what it was for Zumba Fitness. I'm hoping so.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I'm not sure. Actually, according to this, it was initially released in 2010, but in November, so that probably means that it had a lot of sales in 2011. So maybe it was it couldn't have been a Christmas gift because it would have still been sold in December then.
Yeah.
What a mystery. Anyway, I will encourage video game exercise, so I'll give Zumba Fitness a bat cookie.
Yeah, sounds like fun. Why not?
The 3rd best-selling game of 2011 was something called Battlefield 3. I've never heard of this.
The only Battlefield game I ever played was Battlefield 1942 because it was possible to download it and play it in like 10 minutes about. So in tech class, you could actually download it and put it onto the computer when I was in high school. They're first-person shooter games. They're mostly, like almost exclusively meant to be multiplayer games. So it's like the multiplayer is very good. And then the single player is like either non-existent or kind of meh. But I think Battlefield, the first one I believe was like World War I, World War II, and then 2 was like newer things. And Battlefield 3 kind of had this like pan-dimensional aspect to it. Wow, that's not sci-fi, but like it was like different aspects of warfare.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia article for this. It says it's the 11th installment in the Battlefield franchise.
But it's called 3.
But yeah, so it's a direct sequel to Battlefield 2.
Okay.
Which had come out in 2005. And yeah, the poster for the game looks like it's a soldier walking towards the sun, and his like part of his body's like Burning Orange or something. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, there was a series, like, it's the 11th game. They had a lot of, like, spin-offs of Battlefield and, like, for specific kind of wars. It's a series that has gone on now.
It's made by your favorite developer, Electronic Arts.
Yeah, well, it's not a Star Wars game, so it doesn't get as much hate as other ones.
This gets a bat-noogie for me, just from my personal interest level.
I also give it a bat-noogie. I feel like it wasn't one of the most memorable Battlefield games, but then again, I'm biased because I really only remember 1942.
The second best-selling video game of 2011 was FIFA 12.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 2012 was a World Cup year, which would help, because I think the World Cup is on the 4s.
Yeah, so this was made in 2011 because it was broadcasted.
But 2012 was a year of a World Cup, so it would have covered that because I believe they covered the event. Maybe not. I could be completely wrong, but
I mean, this could also be perhaps this is an example of regionalism because this is an article from the UK. So maybe it is a case where, like, if this was America's list, the football game would
the Madden game would be there instead of the FIFA game. Yeah, it's very possible.
So, I mean, I find soccer games, like, really hard to play because you got to, like, toggle between the players as you're passing the ball really quickly, and it's just, I don't have the ability to do that well. So, for me, it gets a bat-noogie.
I mean, I enjoyed part of the FIFA game. I don't know if other, like, EA Sports game had this, but I know the FIFA games, like, shortly, I think, after 2005, had the aspect where you could play manager mode, in which basically you were just managing the team, and you could literally, like, simulate all the games and get those results, and then just have to, like, figure out how to, like, train your players and get them calmed down and stuff like that. I thought it was more fun than just playing the games out long and, like, playing an entire season, which took a considerable amount of time.
So the number one best-selling video game of 2011, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. So this means that Call of Duty is the number one video game 2 years in a row.
Yep.
And this is now this was the third installment of the Modern Warfare genre. Quickly looking at Wikipedia, it says that the campaign kind of follows directly after the ends of Modern Warfare 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea how I can understand, like, maybe the weapons are more modern than the stuff you would have used in Black Ops or whatever, but I have no idea how this compares to the other Call of Duty games.
I think it's also more like a bigger difference for the campaign. I remember actually a while back watching an interesting video. I don't remember who did it, but about, like, how the Modern Warfare movies kind of portrayed war crimes being done by individual, and they got away with it, and then they started getting really political about but is that really reality? Do people get away with war crime? And that's kind of the only thing I remember about it. I don't know. So that noogie probably. I don't remember it being particularly good.
So we gave Black Ops a bat cookie because it said something that was the highest selling game. Are you saying that Black Ops
is still being talked about and people are still hyped about it? I feel like Modern Warfare 3 didn't have the same degree of hype about it.
All right, fair enough. I don't have any personal attachment to the Call of Duty franchise. I just think it's impressive that at least for these first 2 years of the decade, Call of Duty was the number one selling video game, and that, I don't know.
That's true.
There might be something to be said about that. That a game where your soldiers going out and fighting wars says something about the culture of video gaming. But
perhaps I think it also kind of these are, like, North American centric video game things, and they are also based on selling, which means that free to play games aren't taking part of it, which some of the downloadable games started taking over the market later on. But also, they're very accessible games. Shooters are very easy to pick up, and, you know, they have a large disparity of skill, and therefore they kind of just allow more people to go into them. They have a high skill cap, but almost nobody plays at that level. So I think it was like the accessibility of it, and also good marketing.
So before we move on, there's a couple other video games you wanted to mention.
Yes, Portal 2 and Dark Souls, I think, are worth mentioning, because even though they didn't necessarily sell as highly as a lot of the games, they have still remained pretty important. I mean, Portal 2 wasn't the same massive hit that Portal was, but I think as far as like video game sequels, people agree that it was great and that it worked out well, and it still, makes the memes every once in a while. Dark Souls and, Dark Souls 2 and all the other spin-offs of this weird, I don't know if you ever played any of the Dark Souls games.
No.
Okay, well, it's basically very dark fantasy, and Bloodborne was also kind of a spin-off of the same. They have these it's very grimdark, kind of medieval / Renaissance horror fantasy games that are just, they're really cool, very aesthetically pleasing, and they have kind of left their mark on the industry, and I thought it was cool to mention that one, they started at that point, even though it didn't sell as well. And the last one I wanted to mention is Skyward Sword, because it's worth mentioning a huge flop for a franchise. Legend of Zelda doesn't have a lot of flops. Skyward Sword was one of them.
Was it not good?
It was terrible. Like, it did critically poorly. It did not sell very well, and people were like, what is Nintendo doing? Which is kind of unfortunate. I think it was... Yeah, I really honestly don't know anybody who's played that game and who said, yeah, that's a good game. Everybody's like, yeah, that's completely disappointing. So, good on you, Nintendo. You screwed up at least once.
So moving on to TV shows from 2011. When I looked at the most watched TV shows for 2011, it was a lot of the same stuff from 2010. So American Idol and Dancing with the Stars and all that. And I was like, all right, I don't want to have this just be repetition every week of saying that. And you'll admit that these reality TV shows are able to draw in an audience more than dramatized, serialized primetime television. Let's just leave it at that. And then, maybe next year...
TV is the idiot box. We all knew this.
So maybe next week, or next year, or however you want to think about it, the demographics will change there. So what I looked at was Nielsen, who, of course, is like this company in the United States that publishes rankings for TV shows based on how many people watch them. They actually made a separate list for primetime TV shows. So here are the top 5 most watched primetime TV shows from 2011. In 5th place, we have Psych.
That is the only one I've watched in this list. I know of other ones. I liked it, though.
I like Psych. Yeah. Every time I didn't watch it when it was on. I've only seen it in the last couple of years through syndication.
Okay, I watched part of the first season because my brother has the first season on DVD. So, but I do like it. It's a funny show. It's about a what do you want to call him? It's a guy who's like a private investigator who pretends to be pretends to be psychic, but is really just good at investigation. So
yeah.
he basically gives tips to the police based on the evidence that he found out, but to not make it look like they're completely incompetent and he's that much better, he pretends that he's just psychic and knows about these things.
Yeah, so it's a clever, it's kind of like Castle or Murder, She Wrote in the sense that it's like somebody who's not in law enforcement assisting with law enforcement using their specific set of skills.
Yeah. Except the relationship is a bit more tense, which actually makes the show a lot funnier.
Yeah, and this is indeed a comedy. It's not a drama.
Yes.
Number 4, we have Franklin and Bash. I'm going to look this up because I have no idea.
The first thing that came to mind, because I'm a horrible person, is somebody trying to smash turtle shells. Because, Franklin, the turtle, and bashing, I don't know. It sounds odd.
It's funny that I'd never heard of it. So this is it stars Breckin Meyer and someone named Mark Paul Gosselaar as unconventional lawyers and longtime friends. So apparently this started in 2011 and it went on for 4 seasons, and apparently it made the list of most watched primetime shows this year.
I have never heard of that show.
No.
I think we're going to have to give it a bat-noogie for forgettableness since nobody's...
Oh, yeah.
I've heard of all the other ones.
Yeah, sorry. Psych definitely gets a bat cookie.
Yeah, for sure.
Bat-noogies for Franklin and Bash.
Yeah.
Number 3 is Suits.
Funny also that there were 2 lawyer shows that were in 3 and 4.
Yeah, so I've never seen an episode of Suits, but I've heard of it and people seem to like it. It's filmed in Toronto, so good little Canadian references there.
Oh, nice.
Have you ever watched it?
I think I've watched like a couple of episodes here and there, and actually like on TV when it used to play. I didn't watch a lot of TV, but sometimes I'll say that. I don't know. It's in a weird place where like I do remember what it is. I don't remember it being particularly good either. So I'd probably give it a bat-noogie. Just like I think it lasted a little while too. So it wasn't like it got canceled in its first season.
Yeah, people seem to like it, so for that reason alone, I'll give it a bat cookie. And in second place is a show called Covert Affairs. Now, this was another one I had to look up because I'd never really heard of it before. But it stars Piper Perabo and Christopher Gorham. And apparently it's a young CIA trainee who is sent to work as a field agent somewhere. And anyway, I can't tell. I think it's meant to be, it says action drama, so I guess it's not entirely a comedy.
Gives me vibes of like that movie that Tom Cruise did. It was basically about like how the CIA was like involved in the drug trade in South America, but like not quite. I feel like it might have been more topical then. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this one. And you know what I'm realizing? Also, when I was in university, I didn't really have access to
cable TV.
Like, yeah, it's like network television.
Oh yeah, because you were living away from home. I was still living at home, but I mean,
you were busy studying fun philosophy.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But also because at that point, like honestly, in my house we watched like TLC, Cartoon Network Retro, and sports, and that was about it. So we didn't like watch TV as a family either. So it was like I might catch something if I was home from university and like alone in the basement, but not really.
So bat-noogie for Covert Affairs?
Yeah, we'll give a bat-noogie.
And the top-rated drama primetime show of 2011 is American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
I haven't seen it, heard a lot about it. I know people who like it quite a bit. Yeah. I heard that, like, I remember watching it, and it was like, I kept thinking, like, this is kind of lame and a weird thing to be patriotic about, but I also don't like the horror genre or anything that has to do with it, but it seemed to be a lot more thriller than like straight horror. Yes, exactly. No, it had nothing to do with Michael Jackson, but it was more, psychological thriller or something more like
Psycho?
No.
Silence of the Lambs?
Yes, we'll go with that. But I was looking for a TV show that I can't believe
Hannibal?
I'm forgetting the name of. No. The one with the aliens and the two agents.
The X-Files?
Yeah, there you go. I can't believe you got that from that description. Not that I'm putting it in the same league as X-Files or anything like that, but that it had kind of this more thriller than actual like scariness.
So I'll give this a bat cookie just because you seem more excited about it.
I haven't watched it, so I can't be that excited, but I'm still giving it a bat cookie. It went well. Yeah.
So let's talk about some TV shows that started in 2011. At the top of the list here, we have to, of course, talk about Game of Thrones.
Yes.
I've never followed Game of Thrones. I've actually never watched an entire episode of the show.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I'm
ignorant
of a lot of things, I suppose. But what I've been told, Game of Thrones, like a lot of shows, the first season isn't its best season.
No, but it's not its worst season by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, yeah,
either.
I'm sure that it was reserved for the final season.
The first 3 seasons were very solid, actually, and actually, I like the. So weird thing about Game of Thrones, I didn't watch it when it came out. I watched the first 5 seasons the year that season 5 came out, and I watched them 3 times in that year. I don't know why, but I did, and I do actually quite enjoy the first 2 seasons particularly. But the first season had a lot, even though it tried really hard with its shock factor to be like as much exciting TV as it could be. Lots of nudity, lots of shock factor, and killing and incest. Well, only in the first few episodes, but it was very shocking, but it also had very good cinematography. It took its time, especially in the first season, the first couple of seasons, on characters and on character building and conversations with, interspersed with very exciting things. But it was a lot of build-up, which is actually part of why I don't really like some of the later seasons. They had to kind of drop it because they had to cover more things happening, which also, if you read the books, that's a similar thing. In the first couple, first few books, there weren't as many storylines, but the more books there were, the more kind of the storylines started to diverge. The more you're kind of juggling a lot of different things in the air. So I do actually like season 1 for kind of its simplicity. There's only like a few things. There's 3 things going on, and everything else kind of builds up after that.
Yeah, I mean, this show went on to become like the most popular TV show on the air. So
Yeah.
Bat Cookie for sure.
Yes.
Black Mirror started in 2011. This is a show I've
Really?
only heard of, but I've never watched it.
See, I've only heard about it in the last like 2 years. I thought it was a lot more recent than it is.
Yeah, so
Oh.
from what I understand, this is kind of like a modern day Twilight Zone, where like each episode is kind of like a different, like, what if this thing happened, or what if technology did this, or what if this thing did that thing. And admittedly, it sounds interesting. It's just I haven't made time for it. So
Yeah, I heard that especially like, but I feel like it is similarly to the Twilight Zone. Like there are probably some episodes that are amazing, and then others that are just like, oh, that was cool, I guess. Because I do know a lot of people who make a really big deal out of some of them, and maybe it's only because it's been on Netflix recently that I've only heard about it recently.
perhaps,
Which
so
could be an interesting thing to think about, as we go on, shows that we've watched through Netflix rather than when it was
yeah.
on.
So I'll give Suits a bat, or sorry, what am I thinking? Yeah, Black Mirror a Bat Cookie.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned Suits because I was looking at them on the list. That show actually did start in 2011, so it is fairly impressive that in its first year it was on the top list of watched dramas. So I guess people really like, shows about well-dressed lawyers.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know the next two, but maybe
Last
you
Man
can...
Standing. This is a sitcom starring Tim Allen.
Okay.
It's about a like.
Was Tool Time over and he just decided to do that?
Well, it's actually like from the same creator as Home Improvement. So yeah, he's cast as a guy who works at like a kind of like a Bass Pro Shop, but like an off-brand Bass Pro Shop because they can't use the Bass Pro Shop branding. And
In fact, if you say Bass Pro Shop one more time, you will have to pay them some money.
yeah, so yeah, this show is significant in the sense that it's one of the shows of recent history that actually was like canceled by one network and then picked up by another. So it was originally aired on ABC and went on for like 4 seasons or 4 or 5 seasons, was canceled, and then Fox decided to renew it, and it continued on a different
Scrubs
network.
did that too.
Yeah, so some people like it, some people don't. He's
Community tried to do that and it didn't work.
So I'll give Last Man Standing a Bat Cookie.
Yeah, you convinced me. I'll say as well.
Once Upon a Time is a show that started in 2011. So this is a show that my roommate actually has like most of it on DVD, and I've had people explain it to me, and I'm surprised I never actually like watched it because it sounds interesting. It's basically a bunch of fairy tale characters and Disney characters kind of converging. It's kind of like, it sounds like it's like the MCU but for fairy tales and Disney.
So like Into the Woods if it was a TV show?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Okay.
Except there's like, yeah, or even like that like show Descendants, if you've ever heard of that like Disney movie.
No.
But like as time went on, it's like it used to be just the fairy tale characters, and then they started bringing like Maleficent and Jafar and Mulan, and even Anna and Elsa from Frozen showed up towards the end.
That is weird.
So it's like,
It's a live action show?
Yeah, it's a live action show.
That is weird.
So as an idea, it sounds very exciting. It's definitely on my list of things to watch eventually.
Okay.
Bat Cookie? I mean, you can disagree.
Yeah, I'll give it a thin back cookie. I like those kind of concept show, and I feel like at the time it wasn't as popular because fantasy hadn't done its massive resurgence. So,
And
yeah.
then finally, Bob's Burgers or H. John. I can't do an H. John Benjamin voice, but
I've never watched it.
You never
like
seen- really?
I'm vaguely aware of it.
you seem like
but
the kind of guy who would enjoy Bob's Burgers.
possibly. I don't know. I'm very particular about the animated shows I watch.
I don't particularly like. I don't find it the greatest thing ever. It's kind of one of those things where, again, like I've watched it mostly when it's on Netflix. Like I never bothered going on and watching it on Fox or whatever channel it airs in Canada when it was actually airing. But it's one of those shows where it's like, if I got nothing better to do, I'll throw it on Netflix.
Oh, fair enough. But I feel like I have a lot of shows that would come before that on Netflix
Yeah.
that I might throw on.
So it gets a Thinsations Bat Cookie for me.
I'll give it a Thinssation bat-noogie. Because we're close to it, but maybe not.
And then let's just wrap up TV time by talking about some TV shows that ended in 2011. Hannah Montana had its finale in 2011. Now, I remember this show when it came out, like in 2006 or whatever. And I think this is important to mention just from a pop culture perspective because it kind of represents how Miley Cyrus is another one of these actors, singers that got their start through the Disney branding of being like super family friendly. And as soon as her show was over, she like did her whole wrecking ball and everything else to like try and like market herself as an adult instead. And it was kind of like, for me, it was almost radically, it's like, whoa, like this is a massive shift. And it was kind of almost like felt like she was trying too hard, you know?
I don't pay attention to a lot of those child stars things. I don't know. I was vaguely aware that Hannah Montana was a thing and it was a Disney show.
She was kind of like a superhero. She had a secret identity, which was really the only selling point for me. I was like, this is cool.
I thought that was actually just a difference between who she was in real life and who she was in the show, not that it was actually canon in the show.
No, in the show, her name was still, I can't remember her fake, like she was Miley and she went to school as Miley, but then she had the wig and the makeup to like turn her into Hannah Montana so that she could be a pop star while also having like a normal life.
That's the least high school student thing ever. I want to be a pop star, but I don't want people to know about it.
Well, because her dad, Billy Ray Cyrus, plays, Stewart, that was her last name in the show. So like in the show, Billy Ray Cyrus is her father, and he's also a one-hit wonder in the show. So it's like there's a bit of a tradition in universe of her to be a performer because her dad had been one.
Okay. But it feels like, is she trying to hide it from her dad or from her friends?
From her friends. So like,
yeah, that's not something teenagers do. Like,
Spider-Man, he does it.
Yeah, that's a different thing. He doesn't do it to hide it from his friends. He does it to keep his family safe.
I guess.
If she's just doing it so like that her friends don't think she's famous, that's like the least high schoolish thing to do.
Yeah. Anyway, it ended in 2011, and that was the end of Miley Cyrus being a wholesome person. Nothing against her personally. So in honor of the show, I'll give it a bat cookie.
No, I can't in good conscience do that. It was too dumb.
So Smallville ended in 2011. In my opinion, like, this is a show I followed for many years. I have a lot of the seasons on DVD. It went on for far too long. It should have ended like with season 6, maybe season 7. It got to the point like towards the end, there were so many other superheroes showing up on the show. Like you had Booster Gold and Blue Beetle and Green Arrow and Aquaman. You had all these other characters, and Hawkman. You had all these other characters who had already embraced their superhero persona. And you had Clark Kent being like, I'm just running around doing Superman stuff without being dressed up like Superman. It was like this final season they had there, season 10. Like they did a lot of nice callbacks and Easter eggs and stuff like that, and it ended on a good note, but you know, it'll get a bat cookie in my heart, but practically it's like I'll give it a bat noogie as well for going on for too long.
I have always disliked Smallville as a concept.
What?
I know. The concept of Clark Kent growing up struggling with being Superman, I always thought was dumb. Partially, like, I understand, like, this was mostly when it came out, I definitely had that attitude, and I was like, why? Superman is Superman. He's never had trouble with it, and canonically, because I had read quite a few of the older Superman comics, and it was just like, no, he was always okay with being Superman. He like, Clark Kent never had a problem or any angst, and growing up, he was just like, yeah, no, this is who I am, this is cool. He didn't have any problem with his aunt and uncle or parents, and like, to me, the whole concept of Smallville was always very strange, and I didn't like it. I still don't very much like it, and I've heard weird things about it. Like, every season ended on a bigger and bigger cliffhanger every time, which is a weird thing to go on. So I never actually watched it, though, and looking at it from a more mature point of view, I understand that, especially for Superman, DC has been trying really hard to give him more and more depth, so that's probably goes a long way towards it. But I give it a bat noogie because I still dislike the concept of it, and I've heard a lot of bad things, that it went on too long, that the seasons kind of tried too hard to do certain things, and that ultimately the best character in it, you might disagree, but this is what I've heard from several different people, was actually Lex Luthor.
No,
and it would have been a better show if it was about him rather than Clark Kent.
I think we could do a whole episode on Smallville at some point.
I'd have to watch some of it.
Yes, you would.
I'd be open to that.
And finally, Batman, the Brave and the Bold ended its run in 2011. I didn't watch this show really. I saw it a bit while it was on, but then I kind of fell in love with it afterwards because it's an animated Batman show that is a great kind of love letter to the Silver Age of comics. It really embraces a lot of the absurdity and weirdness that was common in comic books at the time.
And you also very much like the very Silver Age Batman show, the
60s one?
Yeah,
I mean,
because that one is also like typical like Silver Age comics with the like, you know, no blood, no extreme violence, crime doesn't pay, like everything is very.
Yeah, but Brave and the Bold took itself more seriously than the 60s show did.
It's hard not to.
And also, like, they did a lot of work to really like pair Batman up with very obscure DC Comics characters I'd never heard of before. Like, I'd never heard of Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern, or I'd never heard of Plastic Man, or, you know, and they did a lot to make Aquaman a really fun character. Like, it was the first time I actually thought Aquaman was someone I'd enjoyed seeing on screen. So I'll give that show a lot of credit for making me fall in love more with the broader DC Comics history. And while it's not like my favorite version of Batman, this is one of the ones that met Scooby-Doo. They did a movie of that.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was great. And
I think I watched that one, actually.
Yeah?
Watched a lot of Scooby-Doo when I was a kid.
Okay, there you go. So and if you're a hardcore Batman fan, there are all kinds of fun Easter eggs in the show. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, you convinced me to give it a Bat Cookie as well. I've never watched it, but I was aware of it, so...
I think what we're actually going to do something a little different here. We're going to release this in 2 parts. So this week you'll hear the first half of our conversation about 2011, and then next week you'll hear the second half.
If you want to contact the show with a question or idea for an episode, you can send us an email
at batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. Share our posts on Facebook and make sure to like our page because we want everyone to join us inside the Bat Jar.
We have a YouTube channel where you can find us, listen to our videos, subscribe, join the notification squad, all that stuff. And yeah, as I mentioned, next week you're going to hear the second half of our review of Nerd and Geek Culture from 2011. So come back to the Bat Jar podcast next week for our look at the second half of Nerd and Geek Culture from 2011. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
And I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
And I did not think of something this week.